today's webinar. Thank you for joining all of you. Our topic for today is navigating sustainability in businesses, the role of Chief Sustainability Officer. And our speaker for today is Ms. Pooja Kumar, Fellow TERI Council for Business Sustainability at the Energy and Resource Institute. Pooja Kumar is a sustainability professional with expertise in devising sustainability strategies for corporates, developing, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating programs and initiatives in the social and environmental responsibility domain, and designing strategies for effective stakeholder engagement and management. With over 16 years of experience in sustainable development, Ms. Kumar has undertaken assessments of various mid-cap and large-cap companies, Indian and multinational, representing diverse industry sectors on ESG and sustainability parameters. She has led strategic innovation in program management by leveraging on need analysis to devise multi-stakeholder integration plans, resulting in significant improvements in the efficiency and efficacy of ongoing programs. She has been actively engaged in conceptualizing, developing, and conducting issue-based trainings and workshops covering diverse aspects of business sustainability for middle and senior management professionals. Ms. Kumar holds an MBA with specialization in corporate social and environmental responsibility from the Indian Institute of Forest Management, Bhopal. Over the course of her professional career, she has worked as a project lead and has been a team member for several programs of sustainable development with diverse stakeholders, including large, medium, and small Indian and international corporates and MNCs representing diverse industry sectors, government, non-government organizations, multilateral organizations, and the rural and urban communities. Welcome, Pooja. We're happy to have you on the JMA platform.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Anushka. Thank you for having me here. A very good evening to everyone present today. I know it's it's towards the end of the day that we have reached, but still there is no winding up, which we can see in the near, immediate time that we have. But and it's going to be a long day for all of us and a longer evening, but I'll try to stick to the time limit that we have for our presentation today. And I'm sure it'll be an engaging and a stimulating session for all of us present today. So without much ado, let me just start off with the presentation. Anushka, would you have the presentation or should I share it from my end?
Hello. If you can,
Okay.
it will be helpful.
Let me just share it from my end. Just a minute. Yeah, is it visible to everyone?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Anushka, if you can just guide me to go, full screen with this. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting it.
It's Control L.
Control L. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, is it visible now?
Yes.
All right. So without much ado, let's get started with it. Today we are here to understand, how we can navigate sustainability in business environment and what exactly can be the role of a chief sustainability officer. We have been hearing this term for quite some time now, and increasingly the role has been becoming important as we can see around us. But what does it exactly entail, and what other aspects to be looked at? Let's have a look at it. But before that, let me just give you a presentation overview of what all we will cover today. We'll start off with the short movie on how the business of today is embracing the transition that the world is witnessing today towards a green economy, and how the sustainability officers that we have around the companies, they look at from the business perspective, from the business point of view. This will be followed by a brief introduction about TERI, the Energy and Resources Institute, and a glimpse of the diverse nature of work and the themes that the organization engages in the field of energy, environment, climate change, sustainable development, and so on. And then we'll move on to taking a deeper dive on the subject of ESG, the sustainable development concept, the various frameworks that drive sustainable development around the world, and the evolution of ESG and the regulations and frameworks around it. With this context, then we will try to understand what exactly is the role of a chief sustainability officer in driving the agenda of sustainable development within an organization and beyond, in line with the national and global development priorities that we have. And subsequently, we'll have a quick look at the aspects and components of the training program that has been specially curated for the sustainability professionals, uh, followed by closing of the session with 8 to 10 minutes of special dedicated time to a Q&A session. So this is broadly how we'll go about it. So as we mentioned, let me just start off with the short movie. Please let know if the sound is there or not.
The movie is not playing.
Hold on, hold on. Please hold on.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Is it, Asmita, is it possible to play the movie at your end?
Sure. Vinay,
Yeah,
please
please
do
do
the
that.
needful.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Asmita, playing.
Vinay, is it being shared?
Asmita, do you want me to try again?
Yes, Pooja. I think Vinay is also facing some issue.
Let me just try it again. Is it audible and visible?
It's not audible. When you can reshare your screen and there is an option. You can open that and their audio option is there. You have to turn it on, then only audio will be available.
Yes.
When you're sharing the
All
screen,
right.
there is a small icon.
Sure, sure, sure.
Is significant today.
I hope it's fine now.
The aspect of just transition and its relationship with the energy transition is significant today.
Just transition is at the heart of energy transition.
The world will witness a transition away from fossil fuels to renewables. We are going to create a lot of winners and losers.
It's only by working together that we'll be able to bring through the changes that everybody needs for a more sustainable, green and equal society.
I believe that this can be achieved by having shared responsibilities, including the government, private sector, research institutions, think tanks and policy advocates.
All stakeholders are getting involved in supporting just an inclusive transition.
We also need to make sure that we leave no one behind.
We also created a philosophy, clean and green is profitable and sustainable.
We need to impart new skills, we need to repurpose land, especially the closed mines.
Work together to be able to create new asset classes which works very well for business and societal transition.
Together we can make a difference and build a better tomorrow and a resilient economy.
We do believe that the outcomes of the leadership that is being shown by Indian businesses in this context will help us in moving towards a more just, more inclusive world for everyone.
That's what just transition means to me.
Just transition for me is a fair transition, and when we talk about fair, which should be fair with everybody, whichever stakeholder is associated with our business, we have to be fair with him. Now, if you look at the 2015 ILO definition, which primarily focuses on society or the stakeholder, but today the context has changed.
I think the most important criteria for achieving the transition goal is what's inscribed in SDG 17. That's about collaboration and partnership. And that's very, very difficult. How do you get the different sectoral players, the public sector, the private sector, the development sector, the government, and the academia to work together? I think that's critical to be able to achieve the transition goals because you require multi-sectoral collaboration.
I believe that this can be achieved by having shared responsibilities. When we do so, we have to be mindful of the fact that when we transition from carbon-based economy to a green-based economy, there might be certain areas where a lot of people are affected. Now, this can be achieved only if we are mindful of the fact that we as a society should think for these people as well.
Given the nature of risk that climate change is posing to us, it is all about taking everyone along and we leave no one behind.
Just transition is not something that comes afterwards. It's actually a prerequisite. How we deal with workers whose livelihoods will be disrupted because of climate change and the energy transition, but also because of other forces like technology or the pandemic. I think how we address the needs of workers so that they are able to transition from one sector to another, not just from fossil fuels to greener sectors, but economy-wide.
Everybody is talking about energy transition, everybody is talking about product transition, just in order to meet the decarbonization objective. And when we look at it, we can't look at society in isolation. Society could be one stakeholder, but we also need to look at the suppliers, we also need to look at the customer, we also need to look at the profitability of the business, and that way the investors also. So it has to be really inclusive, which should include all the stakeholders.
It is a matter of great satisfaction that not only India, but within it, all stakeholders are getting involved in supporting just an inclusive transition. We find particularly attractive that our businesses are taking this seriously. The TERI Council for Business Sustainability is playing a lead role.
TERI's focus is to use its research to create more sustainable development options through creating policies, through creating technologies, through creating products and services.
I am fully convinced that people who are waking up now by seeing impact of global warming day in, day out, they have started also taking actions.
We do believe that the outcomes of the leadership that is being shown by Indian businesses in this context will help us in moving towards a more just, more inclusive world for everyone.
When we talk about greener and more sustainable pathways, we're talking about economic development led by industry and economic activities. And for that to actually bear fruit, we need to take along with us the communities within which we are located. For countries like India, communities or the social side of development is at the core of the very development narrative. And if we don't take people along, people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak, we will have failed.
That's what just transition means to me.
We also need to address how systemic and broad policies and regulations, including those in the green economy, affect women specifically.
So all the policy decisions, all the technology decisions, all the project decisions, all of them need to take in a filter of, is everyone coming along and we are not leaving anyone behind.
You have to understand how communities, how countries can diversify their economies, because older jobs will be eliminated, newer jobs will be created, and as we do that, diversification remains a key.
We need to use these diversified and changed systems to ensure that greater support is being provided to individuals within workforces and within supply chains. And we need to be using these sustainable financing mechanisms to ensure that equal opportunities are coming through for everybody at a time when great change is upon us. And it's only through collaboration that we're going to be able to achieve this.
What I'm working on is blended finance solution for climate transition. So basically what we do is we pull in different types of capital from across the globe. And this capital comes from the private sector, it comes from the development sector, and it comes from the government. And all this capital have different kinds of requirements. Some of them require returns, like the private sector capital, and the rest of the capital, they require a lot of impact. So it's important to make them work together to be able to create new asset classes which works very well for business and societal transition.
Blended finance or pooled finance, and using them in innovative ways to ensure that it reaches the bottom of the pyramid and lifts these people who are our demographic dividend out of poverty and into a more sustainable livelihood for the future generations.
We are working in many ways into greener financing. We support into EV, we support into solar, wind, solid waste management. This energy is again pumped into the grid and into the system.
The action which we are going to take forward, which also includes action for just transition. I'm fully convinced that people who are waking up now by seeing impact of global warming day in, day out, they have started also taking actions.
Just transition. This is an incredibly complex topic. In order to try to foster more sustainable financial solutions, we need to bring in experts. We need to make sure that the conversation is focused on a collaboration. It's only through collaboration where we have shared leadership that we're going to be able to drive towards solutions. We need to look at ways that we can bring in private equity financing to turn a local conversation into a global agenda. We need to focus on solutions that bring together the needs of businesses and the needs of individuals within a supply chain, the needs of communities too. We need to think about how we can ensure that female workers, that reskilling takes place.
We need to adopt clean technologies that can have a better source of energy, and also that reduces the waste. There is more resource or better resource utilization, and also minimum waste creation. We are doing skilling and training for green jobs, which means green skills, so that we can create a better ecosystem, skilling ecosystem, where we can promote these new technologies or emerging technologies for a better future and a greater environment.
We have been able to reskill our people who are working in thermal power plant, and now they are working along with thermal power plant in solar power plant, in waste heat recovery power plant. People who are working on coal, they are now also working on green fuel.
We're not going to have a green transition unless we preemptively address the just transition first. And that means keeping in mind that we need to think about our labor markets and that we need to think about our workers and how we transition them, not just from fossil fuel to greener sectors, but economy-wide, how we deal with the effects of the green transition. We need to go community by community, sector by sector, small enterprise by small enterprise, making sure that we have enough examples of a green transition.
You have to understand how communities, how countries can diversify their economies, because older jobs will be eliminated, newer jobs will be created, and as we do that, diversification remains a key.
We know in India 70% electricity generation is coal-based, and over-dependence on coal is deep-seated. More than 15 million people are dependent on coal directly or indirectly. Moving forward, we need to create a blueprint, and demystify this concept of just transition, and especially at the subnational level, join hands with business, with state, with civil society and the people themselves, the communities around, and create a sense of ownership. And together we have to really create a kind of integrated plan, for moving forward.
The Paris Climate Agreement that was adopted by the United Nations includes just transition as an important aspect. Just transition also has its roots in the key principles of Article 3 of the UNFCCC. These focus areas will remain at the core of future deliberations as we strive to achieve a net zero and resilient future.
Yeah, hi, am I audible?
Yes, Pooja.
Okay. Yeah, so that I'm sure all of us will concur that it was quite an interesting perspective and very much in alignment with the central and transformative promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that is leaving no one behind. And surely it proves to be true for all, including businesses. But how to operationalize it? For it, we would first need to understand what exactly is sustainability, what is considered as sustainable, what are the aspects of sustainable development or being a sustainable business and a responsible business, and so on and so forth. So before we delve into it, let me just give you a quick overview of TERI, the organization that I come from. TERI is a multidisciplinary organization providing thought leadership with the know-how to show how in the field of energy, environment, climate change, waste, resource management, sustainable development for over 5 decades. Coincidentally, in fact, it seems the year 2024 is also the year when we are celebrating our 50 years of relentless efforts in driving thought leadership in the field of climate change and sustainable development in India and at global levels. Translating its research into technology products, technical services, as well as policy and advisory and outreach, TERI has been instrumental in shaping many of Government of India's policies on climate change and sustainable development and accelerating action by concerned players and stakeholders. TERI has worked extensively on the physical risk of climate change, along with identifying strategic interventions for developing climate resilient infrastructure, be it for the oil and gas sector or the transport sector or other industry sectors in India. The GHG program. Under the India GHG program, TERI has developed a framework which is a simplified and a do-it-yourself tool for measuring and managing Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3 emissions, GHG emissions for organizations. Besides various other users, the tool is also used by the Department of Logistics in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry for calculating their GHG emissions from their freight movement. TERI has brought on board close to 100 corporates in India, most of them being the mega large or the large corporates in India, voluntarily committing to lower their GHG emissions and discuss and share their progress on decarbonization in line with national and international goals. Griha, which is developed by TERI, has been recognized as India's own green building rating system, and it's part of the mitigation strategy for climate change in India's nationally determined contributions committed to the UNFCCC. TERI has been engaged in developing renewable energy roadmaps for a number of Indian corporates from diverse sectors, underpinning the principles of what we just heard in the movie, responsible and just transitions. Sustainability taking center stage, TERI has also worked with the Lakme India Fashion Week for making it a carbon neutral event, trying to understand what all aspects can be looked at for reducing the carbon emissions to mitigation efforts as well. Been engaged in baselining and quantification of carbon sequestration for organizations as well as at country level, along with identifying innovative financing mechanisms to achieve additional carbon sequestration through additional forest and tree covers in India by 2030. So these are some of the aspects that we will be using in the modules that have been designed under the training program that will be offered to the sustainability professionals. Coming on to the topic for the day, basically a topic before we get into the role of the CSOs, trying to understand what exactly is the ESG or the sustainability about. See, while the UN Sustainable Development Goals, they recognize that the role of adverse climate change impacts in undermining sustainable development, and they include specific targets on disaster risk reduction as well. The Paris Agreement recognizes the close and deep linkages between climate action and sustainable development. And the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction recognizes climate change as a driver for disaster risk reduction, and that disaster risk reduction is essential to sustainable development. So if you see, these are all concepts and aspects which take into account the impacts of the other one and how it is important to look at these aspects if we were to look at sustainable development, if we were to drive the change that we are looking for, the transition that we are looking for in moving towards a sustainable economy. The business being the key drivers of economic growth are now increasingly being recognized as a significant player in driving the sustainable development. And exhibiting climate and development leadership, the corporates give confidence to the governments to set ambitious climate policies that can help transition the world to a green and sustainable economy regime. It's a cycle or a loop which we may call. The government sets targets and it works on the policies. At the same time, the corporates, they show that yes, it is really possible. The climate action or sustainable development action is also is possible. And from that perspective, the government gets the confidence to move ahead in designing and devising more ambitious targets to move towards a sustainable regime at a faster, accelerated pace. So if you see, India has been exhibiting climate leadership towards building a better future in comparison to many of the developed nations when we were to look at it. In August 22, India updated its indices, committing to reduce the emission intensity of its GDP by 45% by the year 2030 from its 2005 level, and develop its installed power capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy resources to 50% by 2030. And at the 26th session of the UNFCCC, India in November 2021 had announced its target to achieve its net zero target by 2070. This is when many of the developing nations themselves haven't raised their ambitions sufficiently. Excuse me. So what we see, the importance of, there is a lot of importance in terms of the reporting standards on a global scale, which cannot be overstated. It's crucial to understand and ensure that all businesses and governments have a clear understanding of the cost of what you call the hashtag climate change. Failure to analyze the regulatory landscape can lead to non-compliance with relevant policies, resulting in financial risk and a lack of transparency among stakeholders. Therefore, it's vital that businesses understand the regulations that apply to them and take necessary action to comply with them. Seeking voluntary frameworks can help businesses create impactful and effective reports, mitigating the financial risk and increasing transparency. By being proactive, businesses can become pioneers in the transition to a sustainable economy. They can set an example and check out So we see from the investor community themselves, they are also looking at the impact of their investment decision or the advice that results in negative impacts on sustainability factors. So they are also looking for avenues to understand how their investments are creating a positive or a negative impact on the social, with respect to social considerations or the environmental considerations or the governance related aspects. The ESG landscape, if you talk about the India regime, India is witnessing. I'm sure we all of us have been following what has been happening in the ESG landscape. India is witnessing a move from voluntary to a mandatory regime, be it the BRSR disclosures that are coming up, the ESG disclosures which have been right from top 500, now they have been extended to the top 1,000 companies who have to report on the BRSR as per the BRSR framework. Apart from it, now this is also being extended to the value chain of the organizations for the majority of organizations in a staggered manner, of course. The CSR ruling that came in the year 2013, India was the first country to come up with such a statutory obligation for the corporates to dedicate some part of their profits to the CSR activities. The Indian capital markets too are not just relying on financial parameters, but they are also looking at the environment, social and governance aspects as well. So what we see here is the ESG ratings which are coming into the picture, which are more increasingly being used by investor community, by the organizations, by several institutions to look at the performance of organizations, to understand how the organization is performing on these considerations is relevant to be seen from this perspective. The recent times have also been seeing new asset class which are coming up that is aligned to sustainability. These new asset class are gaining traction increasingly, with the investors wanting more companies to disclose more of their information on various aspects besides the environmental component, be it the social part of it, be it the governance part of it. If you talk about the social part of it, there is the more and more investors are looking at corporates disclosing information on their workforce performance data, how they are managing the workforce, both within their organization and beyond it, which includes their value chain. So we see a whole lot of the ESG landscape is evolving into a more of a mandatory regime, which looks at each aspect of sustainability, the environmental aspect, the social aspect, or the governance aspect with close scrutiny to understand what exactly the corporates are doing. But what exactly is corporate sustainability? So we know that there was a time when sustainability was more, it was more, the focus was more on the CSR aspect, and slowly and steadily it has been moving, the focus has been moving to sustainability with more granular details being looked at from the ESG perspective, wherein the environment, social and governance, these aspects give clear performance, give a give insight on the performance of the organization with respect to these aspects. So if you see, it's not just economic or financial growth based on, but it is based on the principles of responsible and just transition that takes into account the investors' expectations, the consumers' demands, the government expectations, and the society at large wherein the organization operates, along with looking at the whole lot of stakeholders which come along the value chain of the organization, both downstream and upstream, and the larger set of stakeholders that we have. So sustainability is broadly now looking at, it's all about balancing your economic, environmental and social performance to look at, to ensure its long-term viability and business continuity. It's more than CSR as we've talked about. It's going into more granular details, trying to understand what exactly it entails, not just covering up, not just doing some good at one level, but the entire value chain has to be looked at. So from this perspective, we'll try to understand what exactly is the business case for ESG, or how can ESG help in creating long-term value. In today's fast-paced and competitive business world, the integration of ESG, or the environmental, social and governance principles, is transforming from a mere trend into a crucial strategy for success, which we've seen increasingly around us. The question isn't just why ESG. Now we are not focusing on the why part of it, but how can we afford to ignore it? Companies and investors alike are waking up to the reality that sustainability practices are key to driving long-term value. If you talk about risk management, in terms of risk management, companies with strong ESG practices are more than 2.5 times likely to avoid major financial losses due to regulatory fines and environmental impacts, according to a survey by McKinsey in the 2020 study. By anticipating and mitigating these risks, businesses can avoid costly disruptions and maintain stability. In terms of reputation and brand loyalty, the Nielsen survey of 2021 found that 73% of global consumers are willing to change their consumption habits to reduce environmental impact, which is a big chunk of population that we are talking about. Brands that demonstrate a commitment to sustainability and ethical practices build stronger connections with their audience, the consumers, fostering loyalty and trust. If in case of operational efficiency, according to the World Economic Forum, companies that invest in energy efficiency can reduce their operational cost by up to 30%. Sustainable practices such as reducing waste, conserving energy, and optimizing resource use not only benefit the planet, but they also result in significant cost savings over time, which I'm sure everyone, all of us will concur here, because we've been in the thick and thin of the business and how it operates. Coming to the social part of it, attracting and retaining talent. LinkedIn's 2021 Global Talent Trends report highlights that 86% of millennials would consider taking a pay cut to work at a company whose values align with their own. Companies that prioritize ESG are more attractive to top talent, leading to higher employee satisfaction and retention rates. In fact, the report also states that a large number of millennials, if the values that they have, the organization values, do not align with their own, they will not take up those jobs. Such is the situation. Investment appeal. In terms of investment, sustainable investments have seen a surge, with ESG assets expected to exceed $53 trillion by 2025, as I was just mentioning, that there are new asset classes which are coming up. which represent more than a third of the projected $140.5 trillion in total global assets under management. Companies with strong ESG credentials are perceived as low-risk investments with the potential of steady long-term returns, which the investors are looking for. In terms of innovation and growth, the UN Global Compact reports that businesses that actively engage in sustainable practices are 70% more likely to report higher financial performance over time. Embracing ESG can drive innovation, open up new markets, and foster growth and competitive advantage. So the business case for ESG is clear. It's about creating resilient, forward-looking companies that can thrive in the long run. By integrating ESG into their core strategies, businesses and investors are not only contributing to a better world, but they're also ensuring sustainable success. So in today's world, ESG it's not just a box to check. It's not a tick box exercise that we are doing. It's a real competitive advantage or a competitive edge that it can provide. But how do we make sure that our ESG efforts are truly impactful and not just greenwashing? So for that, we need to look at certain points or some questions that we should ask ourselves. Let's say if we talk about transparency, how transparent should companies be about their ESG practices? Can too much transparency backfire? So we have to look at the balancing act. Technological innovation. What new technologies will transform ESG practices in the next 5 years? We have to take that into account. Consumer impact. Are people really willing to pay more for sustainably produced products? It's about creating value basically. Real value, not just for the planet, but for businesses and communities alike. So with this context, where does the CSO or the Chief Sustainability Officer fit in? Now, sustainable transformation is critical in combating climate change. It has long passed the point of view being a nice to have to being important as a strategic priority for businesses, which is evident in the growing number of Chief Sustainability Officers being appointed in a large number of organizations across the world. And as we've seen through the last few examples. The exponential growth of the CSO is illustrated with a recent study based upon a set of 1,640 listed companies, whereby it was found that companies were hiring more Chief Sustainability Officers in 2021 than they were in the previous 5 years combined. So you see the jump that we are seeing. Beyond the number of CSOs rising rapidly on a global scale, the report also found that around 30% of the companies researched had a formal CSO role, and another 50%, while another 50% had a CSO role with limited remit. So having a CSO on board sends a strong signal to investors, consumers, customers, and employees that sustainability is a key consideration, how the organization is serious about the business of sustainability, and how sustainability is a key consideration in both strategic and operational planning. The introduction of a CSO is also shown to have a marked effect on a company's ESG scores. This study, which we talked about, it also showed that globally, 98% of the companies rated with top 5 grades in the Bloomberg Sustainability Ranking had their own CSO or CSO Lite, the light version of the CSO. By contrast, 52% of the ESG laggards who were graded between D plus to D negative had no CSO at all. So there is a clear linkage with the organization's performance, ESG performance, and the role of the CSO. So the rise of CSO is a clear indication of the growing importance of sustainability in today's business landscape. So as we see, as the organizations mature, they move up their sustainability path. The role of the CSO is also expanding and getting enhanced. As organizations across the globe face increasing pressure to address sustainability issues, CSOs will play a critical role in driving these efforts. from the role of ensuring environmental compliance, communicating on the organization's corporate social initiatives to its stakeholders with the tacit goal of preventing reputational risk and gaining the social license to operate, which was erstwhile the case. The role of a CSO over time has evolved to a more strategic one, steering forward the organization towards a global green economy, leading ambitious climate and sustainability action, and fostering credibility among stakeholders. The need to comply with stricter regulatory frameworks, understanding and managing internal stakeholders' expectations, and the investors' and consumers' preferences and expectations, foreseeing underlying risks and opportunities, and devising appropriate future strategies in line with local and global priorities are fast propelling the role of a CSO to the forefront of decision making. It has come closer to what is now in many companies called that of a strategic thinker, a provider of frameworks and guidance to the CEO on building a sustainability vision for the company and embedding sustainability thinking into the core of the organization and the business. So with the sustainability becoming a business critical goal and ESG considerations becoming key to ensuring business success, the role of CSO is fast growing into one that encompasses all. And the requirement for the roles focused on sustainability have also changed significantly in the recent years. While such positions were once more of a subordinate role with topics such as CSR, as we mentioned earlier, they are now being looked at in a more complex way, wherein the CSO requires a deeper understanding of all parts of the business. They need to be able to build alliances and networks because they are in contact with almost every part of the organization. The CSO must be able to understand the interconnectedness of all ESG issues, deal with their complexities, and be able to join the dots. So against the backdrop of the strategic role that the CSOs play in driving the achievement of organizational goals aligned with national and global priorities, navigating successfully across the evolving sustainability landscape, it's interesting to understand the skills and backgrounds for the role to galvanize a transformative change across the organization, steer ahead the organization effectively towards a green and sustainable future, and exhibit thought leadership. So from this perspective, we see that there was a recent study which talked about what the kind of backgrounds the CSOs come from. It was found that approximately a third of them came to their leadership position from an existing corporate sustainability department or from an outside organization related to sustainability. Around 30% had a background in strategy, like such as the consultants or within strategy departments, or experience in companies' business lines or support functions. And roughly one-fifth of the CSOs reviewed combined these backgrounds of sustainability and business, which shows that which shows the importance of CSOs bridging those two fields. So only a slightly more than 15% of the CSOs came from professions such as legal, communication, corporate citizenship, or investment management. So broadly speaking, we see two key areas emerging out here. One, the sustainability officers, they have been within the organization, or they have an understanding, the deeper understanding of how the organizations work. They have been moving across the organization for over several years. Having gained that experience, they have the understanding of how the entire organization works. And apart from that, they have a deeper understanding of the concept of sustainability rather than someone who is a novice in the area. So with this context, we'll try to understand the role of, excuse me. So from this perspective, we've tried to understand what exactly the role of the CSO is, how they are going to be who are going to be the key drivers of sustainability within the organization and beyond. So it's with this perspective that we've come up with this program. which has 3 modules. While the role, when we are talking about the role of the CSO, while the role is still relatively new, it has already become vital part of the corporate landscape, and its importance is only set to grow in the years to come. So CSOs need to balance innovation, risk management, sustainability, and business challenges, and they need to be adept at introducing changes within the organization. So whatever their background, today's CSOs face demands that transcend merely handling compliance and reporting on what used to be considered non-financial considerations. To participate in strategic decisions, they need a thorough understanding of the business, particularly of the areas in which the sustainability and profitability are complementary or contradictory. A knowledge of sustainability practices relevant to their industry sector and strategic foresight is what is required. So with this perspective, with this understanding, this program that we have, it aims to assist participants become sustainability champions within their organizations and drive long-lasting sustainable change within and beyond their organization. The program is designed to enhance the knowledge, skills, and capacity of sustainability function-oriented management professionals on the imperatives of integrating sustainability in business strategy and operations for creating long-term stakeholder value and long-term profitability and business continuity. The program aims to provide the participants the skills which are required to operationalize and accelerate the sustainability actions and initiatives across the organization and their value chain towards becoming future ready. So with this, we come to the end of this session, and we just yeah, so we've come to the end of the presentation, but in case if there are any questions or any queries that we have, I'm happy to take that, please.
So the portal is open for the Q&A round, and you have any questions, you can type it on the chat box or you can unmute yourself. So there is a question. When will the course commence? So Farooq, as soon as we'll have all the members bought in and all the payments will be made, we'll let you know.
I believe there was a question from one Mr. Amit Chaudhary, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening. Hi, Amitji.
Yeah, I was having a query that on the ESG landscape, the companies, particularly in India, as you showed in one of your slides, that top 1,000 companies are mandated to report their ESG performance. So, are there indices there or in the public domain from which I can compare that a certain company X is doing better in terms of ESG than a certain company Y?
Yes, certainly. So if you see, let me just take you through that slide. So we have, the Bombay Stock Exchange or the National Stock Exchange. They have come up with their index, which are ESG based index. So if you see in this slide, we have the Bombay Stock Exchange, which has come up, which was the first stock exchange from Asia to join the UN Sustainable Stock Exchange initiative. They have come up with, they launched the theme-based indices, which is the Standard & Poor's BSE Carbonex. Then they have also the BSE 100 ESG Index. If you see in October, if you see this. So there are a whole lot. The Nifty itself, they have launched the 100 ESG Index in the year 2018 as back in 2018. So there are more and more organizations we have, or the Morgan Stanley has come up with the ESG rating, which comes with the ESG ratings. But India in relation to India and Indian companies, BSE and Nifty are the ones who are taking a lead. And apart from that, if you see, there are 8 ESG mutual funds, or I would say 8 were around 2020 or so, but I think today where there would be around 12 ESG mutual fund schemes which are available in Indian capital markets. So there is increasingly it's not just, the focus is not on financial performance, but on the ESG aspects as well, which is being considered to understand how the organization is faring, the organization, and to make those investment decisions.
Okay. Thanks, ma'am.
No problem. Thank you.
So can we have indices like PMI? A follow-up question, a thought came into my mind, that we have something called Purchasing Managers Index. We have PMI values, which directly gives a very quick view of whether the economy is growing on expansion or it's on a contraction, or a particular sector is on expansion or contraction. So can we have quick fix ratios or quick fix indices? You mentioned, right, that 100 companies are there listed with their ESG indices, and that value is calculated once over a financial year, as I presume from your slides. But are there periodic revisions of those indices, those values?
Certainly, there are systems and checks and balances in place to take into account the especially because the landscape, the ESG landscape is moving at a very fast pace, and there are a whole lot of changes which are coming into effect, especially with relation to the national and global priorities. From that perspective, these indices are taking into account these changes, the transitions that are happening.
Okay, so there are indices of that nature.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Prashant has raised his hand. Do you have a question, Prashant?
Yeah.
Prashant.
Hi everyone. This is Prashant from Ecozen Solutions. So my question is, I have gone through, like I was just going through the presentation. So there have been a lot of changes coming up in India with respect to sustainability. So there are companies which are also appointing CSOs, but who is measuring these activities, and is there any body which is like genuinely giving these numbers that this company has done this thing and they have given an impact report? Like it should be genuine. Like a lot of people are giving a lot of reports, but I don't feel like they are just showing the sustainability part, but not genuinely.
Right. So, Prashantji, a very valid question, because it's still a growing. It's a domain which is still growing in terms of the CSOs being appointed. With a whole lot of the ESG landscape having experiencing a whole lot of changes at very accelerated pace. So from that perspective, yes, the CSO appointment, when you see the compared to the last 5 years, the CSOs who have been appointed in the companies, the 2021 saw a greater appointment ratio. So from that perspective, yes, but there are certainly there are studies which have taken place which take into account the organizational performance. Let's say there is, if I'm not wrong, there is the financial performance of companies on the Korean stock exchange. I'm just getting, it's off the cuff, I'm thinking about it. So the Korean stock exchange, how the organizations they are performing in terms of how their financial performance has gone up in relation to the appointment of the CSOs, or the CSO, the companies which had CSOs, how they are performing, and the other ones which do not have such a role or a specific role within the organization, and how for the CSOs, how empowered they are within the organization. So, and how what sort of a role that they play, the seat that they have, if they have a seat at the table, or they interact with the CEOs or not. So those aspects also come into play to help understand how relevant the CSO or the significant the role is for the organization, how seriously they are taking it, and again, how it is impacting the performance of the organization in not just their financial performance, but how it is leading to environmental stewardship within the organization and setting benchmarks. So these aspects are being considered. There are studies which are happening. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. But still, I feel that it has not taken such a leap with considering India as a country. So there are a lot of things need to be put in place, and things are currently not right. But people are saying that sustainability, we are moving towards sustainability, but there are a lot of gaps. Like each individual need to be educated about the situation, and it is a very laborious task for any organization. So I think it is a individual contribution rather than someone saying it in a forum and some sort of people only following it. It's all about individual doing it as an individual, contributing to the sustainability factor. Yeah.
Sanji, very valid point, and that actually brings me to to share one the work that TERI is doing now, with respect to the role of the CEOs. We are trying to look at TERI. We are also trying to look at what exactly would comprise the competencies for the role of a CSO. This is still, the skills, these are still being identified. There are, at international level, there are certain frameworks which look at the role of the CSOs and what exactly entails what goes into the role of the CSO, and plus what are the skills, the knowledge, the attitude, the attributes, the characteristics that make up for a CSO. So, but at India level, we are still looking at it. It's still in the nascent stage. So at TERI, we are looking at, and in fact, on the 13th of June, we have one meeting which is being organized for the Chief Sustainability Officers, wherein we are trying to develop a competency framework for the CSOs to specifically identify what would entail, what are the aspects that need to be considered, what are the organizations, from an organization perspective, what are the organizations looked at when they are looking at filling up the role of a CSO by any person. So certainly at a nascent stage, but we are trying to get there.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for the answer.
In fact, if anybody would be interested, I would be happy to share the details, and subsequently at later stages we can get connected as well on this when we are working on the competency framework.
There is another question, Pooja, on the chat.
Yeah.
It's from Manas Ranjan Sahi. I'm a safety and health professional. Will this course help me in building career in sustainability?
Okay, you are health professional.
No, ma'am. Safety and health professional. So basically, I'm a safety professional. So will this course help me in building career in sustainability? That was my question.
Yes, certainly. Amit ji, right? Am I talking to Amit Chaudhary?
No, ma'am. It is Manas.
He's Mr. Manas.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, Manas ji, certainly, you are looking at safety function in the organization. Is that the case?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes. So if you talk, I think I just briefly touched upon the topic. If you recall, when I was talking about it, how the investor community is looking at how the organization is faring. So now, in terms of the environmental performance, going beyond the environmental performance to look at the social and governance aspects as well. So when you talk about the social aspect, or the social covers the workforce part as well, which you are looking at, the safety part of it, be it within the organization or beyond it, to include the value chain. So how the workforce is being managed by the organization is something that is very crucial, very critical for us several investor for several investors at the at the national and international level. So if I were to bring about this example of the Thomson Reuters Foundation, they are now pioneering. They are looking at the workforce disclosure initiative uh, at the international level, which is a clear demand from the investor community, wherein they are wanting to understand how the organizations are performing with respect to their workforce within the organization and within the value chain. What are the management, what are the practices that they have, and this is not just a a checkbox exercise. They're trying to understand through a series of questions what exactly the organization are doing, be it with respect to the safety standard, be it with respect to the employee wellness, health and wellness, be it with respect to the aspects which are like, let's say, the BRSR also covers them, be it related to the women
BRSR.
workforce which is coming back to work after their maternity leave, and so on and so forth, the parental leaves that are granted to the individuals or in the organization, and so on and so forth. So this is very much in tandem, in congruence with your role that you have at present.
Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, I would like to add here that, and that will certainly add some value, that this year the National Safety Day theme for 2024 was on focus on safety leadership for ESG excellence.
Right.
So it partly answers that now we have shifted from EHS or SHE, means safety, health and environment, to SHS, safety, health and sustainability.
Yes.
So I am from Tata Motors, and we used to have SHE Apex meetings. Earlier, 3 months ago, we used to call them SHE Apex meetings. Now they are rechristened as SHS, Safety, Health and Sustainability meetings.
Right.
So that partly answers that the movement is from more from compliance to, and in your one of your slides you also showed that earlier it was compliance and PR on as the main roles of sustainability manager or chief sustainability officer. But right now it has moved from that point to embedding policies and then a strategy for business sustenance and then C-suite roles. So that answers that these courses may help, and the organization is also slowly and gradually shifting from a compliance role to a strategic role in terms of
Exactly.
sustainability.
True, absolutely, absolutely. There are a whole lot of organizations, organization like Tata Motors, which is, I would say it's a mature organization, the one which has been setting examples and benchmarks for other organizations, being in the arena for a long, long time. The organizations, the move is now from compliance to looking at sustainability at a strategic level, looking at sustainability as a driver for long-term viability for the organization as well as their business continuity, and taking the national priorities into consideration.
Ma'am, if time permits, can I draw back to your slide on the three ambitions that you showed? I have a doubt there. If time permits.
Yeah,
Your
please. Which one?
Yeah, your slide on ambition.
Ambition, the ambition loop. Just a minute.
Yeah, the ambition loop. Yes, it was related to ambition loop.
This one. Is this the one?
The slide has not appeared. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just
Presently,
share.
it is giving details of the module that you mentioned at the end of your presentation.
So, let me just share this. I hope it's visible now.
Yes. It has come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, herein you have mentioned that in the center you have put 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Yes.
But the reports that have come out in magazines published by CSE, Center for Science and Environment, so already we have crossed 1.4 or 1.42, if I'm not wrong. So, is there a catch-up plan or a plan B, or rather, is the think tank going to revise this target?
Target revision is not what we are looking at, because like if we see 1.5 degree is what we are aiming for, and we will work towards it, and which means accelerating our actions, because the time period is getting the time window that we are getting is reducing day by day, by each passing day. So we will only have to look at accelerating our actions. But because 1.5 degree is the target, but at the same time, there will be a time when there will be peaking of the emissions, the temperature of global rise, the temperature rise will also happen. So from that perspective, if you were to let it go to 2 degrees Celsius scenario, there are studies and work which is being done by TERI to look at the 2 degree scenario as well. But at the same time, the focus is on 1.5 degrees.
Okay, that was the answer I was looking for, because as a major think tank, TERI must be having a catch-up plan or a different plan that you mentioned, that a worst scenario of 2 degrees Celsius is also being worked out.
Certainly. So if you see this, let me just go to the next slide. One slide that I had. I am not sure. Let me just look at. Yeah. So here you see the industry charter.
Yes.
Wherein we have a whole lot of large corporates or the mega large corporates in India who are looking at working with the 1.5 degree scenario, looking at lowering their emissions. So the organizations themselves are coming on board, developing their roadmaps.
Tata Motors, I would like to add, Tata Motors. In fact, Tata Group itself has embraced a project called Alingan, that is available in the public domain, and we have committed to zero emissions by 2045.
Exactly. So you see for yourself, the organizations themselves, they are understanding the gravity of the situation, and they are coming up with targets for themselves, which are much trying to achieve the target before the country target or the global level targets that we have.
Okay. Thanks for clarification.
Can I stop sharing my screen now?
Yes, sure. Anurag in the chat box has asked to share the competency framework details as well. Maybe that can be shared.
Sure. So what, Asmita, what we'll do is we'll be in connect, and maybe these queries or these questions can be routed through you.
Definitely. So that brings us to the end of the program. Many of you have already registered for this course certification program in Chief Sustainability Officer that JM is bringing in collaboration with TERI. We request the other participants also to register as soon as possible so that we can start the course classes at earliest. And Anushka, I would like you to take over and please thank our speaker for today.
So there's the poster showing. You can scan the QR code, and we'll be sending you. You can, after you register, we'll be sending you the mail, the brochure, and the payment details. Okay. So thank you all of you for attending today's session. Special thanks to our esteemed speakers, Ms. Pooja Kumar, and participants for their valuable insights and contributions. We extend our gratitude to TERI for their collaboration in this initiative and for providing their expertise and resources. We hope you found the session informative and inspiring. Thank you, everyone. And before that, we'll be sharing a feedback form also.